Hey, everybody, it's your hospitality friend, Glenn here. Can you see me? Can you see me? No, I don't think you can because this is blocking me over here. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. It is the middle of December, and this is our last week before everybody really starts goofing off and not getting anything serious done. So we're excited that we got 3 good live shows with you this week. We're going to be trying to approach hospitality a little bit different. Make sure you stick around for Thursday shows because we're going to be talking about some of the things we loved most throughout the year, or most impressed with throughout the year. And I'm curious as if our guest today is going to make that list. No pressure at all for Santiago Leon, COO with Spearhead Hospitality out of Chicago. Santiago, so great to see you. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. Huge fan of your show.
Hey, thanks.
I can barely believe I'm here now.
I can barely believe I'm here now as well, because quite frankly, man, it's been a long year. And I'm excited to have you on because you described yourself as a hospitality underdog. You described yourself as taking on projects others didn't want to. And that kind of intrigues me because I always love, Santiago, when somebody sees something so clearly when others don't. So I'm not live at the Roby, just so you know, and he is. So how's it going?
Well, thank you. It's going great. It's so funny that you say that. Maybe I'm seeing something that other people don't. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I just failed to see.
I doubt that.
But yeah, the underdog, it's kind of interesting. I've always liked the underdog stories. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of Rocky, and that's like the real underdog, right? And so, I mean, what is an underdog? I guess someone who's unlikely to succeed, right? That's how I see it. It hasn't always been by choice, but when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And of course, when you are the underdog, you can very easily become the hero, mm-hmm. or you become a joke, right? When people say like, "Oh, what was he thinking?" or what they were thinking. So,
yeah, totally. But I like I like being the position of the underdog because there's not as much pressure on you, or at least when I felt like I was the underdog, I didn't have enough pressure on myself because it was like, oh, he may not do it anyway. So you don't have those outside eyeballs, at least my perception of outside eyeballs judging me, right? So I was just able
You're absolutely right.
I'm just able to go about my business, do my thing, and then hopefully, kick some ass and crush it. So what's your story of being the underdog and getting to places like the Roby Chicago and the Getaway Hostel, as well as all of your eateries and stuff?
Of course. Well, we started the company managing the Roby at Wicker Park in Chicago. Mm-hmm. It was the first hotel in the neighborhood, which we weren't sure if it was going to be good or bad. Just for the record, I wasn't the one who came up with the idea of developing the hotel. That was our owners. But I immediately noticed there was a few challenges. It's a very heavily F&B operated hotel. We have actually some of the employees joke around that saying this is an F&B operation with rooms. Yeah. So the revenue mix is about 50-50, which, as you know, can be challenging as the contribution margin for F&B is way lower than rooms.
Right.
And then you're in a historic building with limited signage just because of the historic or the landmark status. Mm-hmm. And you have 4 or 5 outlets in what is already an oversaturated market for F&B. Mm-hmm. So that, of course, is challenging, not to mention all the operational challenges that come with F&B. But it's gone well. Our second project was a restaurant that we were working on right during COVID. Mm-hmm. So they had closed this restaurant in one of the best dining areas in Chicago, the West Loop. And we decided or accepted to take over a project when it wasn't even possible to open a restaurant because of the COVID restrictions.
Right. Ballsy move, but to me, it's like I know the world is going to go back to normal at some point. So it's probably a better opportunity that it seemed at face value.
Of course. And
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that, Glenn, because that's exactly an assumption I made in one of our other projects, thinking that things would go back to how they were. And although they have, they haven't entirely for that specific project I'll tell you about. But anyway, we were working at this Mexican restaurant, which felt, I was very excited about. I'm from Mexico City. So I said, we're going to kick ass. We're going to be the best. And it wasn't the case. I think I took the Underdog a little bit too far, taking over this project when, of course, there were still all these restrictions in place, limited capacities, and on a street that they had decided to close to allow the other restaurants to have some of those igloos they were having on certain cities. So being stuck in the middle of the block was challenging because you don't see that much foot traffic in Chicago in winter, right? So you were not exposed to all these hundreds or maybe thousands of cars driving by every day. So from a marketing perspective, it was challenging. But also, I had accepted to transform a restaurant that had already failed with a very limited budget. So it was just a bad combination of things. And of course, there were some issues with the execution. But I think the idea was the right one. It just timing wasn't, and the budget wasn't. And if we were going to sit down at the big boys table in Chicago, I should have been more realistic and say, hey, we want to have one of the best restaurants in one of the best dining areas in the city. It's going to cost us this much. So that was unrealistic. We ended up deciding to close 1 year later.
That sucks. So it's interesting, this lesson that you took away from this, that sometimes enthusiasm can cloud reality a little bit, right? Is that kind of what you went through? Yeah.
Correct. And we've had our fair share of success at Rowie by transforming spaces with very little money. So I thought, well, maybe we can pull this off and we can make a fantastic restaurant. And I think the food was good. I think the idea was good. The concept was good. Just the execution was poor.
Yeah.
Now, funny thing. So we closed that restaurant. A few months later, I learned that I was curious to see who was going to take next and how they would do. And my whole theme in this restaurant, which was called the Chicatana, was Tulum vibes, right? Everybody was raving about Tulum during COVID. So I said, well, Mexican with, these kind of, I want to say, kind of beach-like feel to it, tropical. So anyway, I ended up learning about 6 or 8 months later after our closure that the next restaurant was going to be a Mexican restaurant with Tulum vibes. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's exactly I had actually left some of my lamps in the space just because they were so big I couldn't take them off. We ended up reusing them. The same wallpaper. I was like, wow, this is the exact same concept, but honestly, it was much better executed. They put the money in. They created a great concept. And as far as I know, you're doing very well.
So how do you think about keeping things on budget now? Because you said you were doing some stuff over at the Roby that didn't really cost too much, but has high impact. So what kind of ideas do you have there that can really help make a transformative moment?
Well, I think that cutting corners when it comes to the concept and the CapEx is never a good idea.
Yeah.
But it's also hard because you have you need to keep a good NOI, you need to keep a healthy cap rate. So it's challenging, and for the hospitality industry, specifically restaurants, Chicago is becoming very, very competitive and very challenging to make money. It's always been restaurants have always been tough, right? Pre-COVID. Successful restaurants were making 5-10% NOI. But that number has only gone lower, so it's the margins are very, very thin. I'm not that concerned about inflation, I think most restaurants have been able to offset that with an increase in prices. So when you see your food and beverage costs nowadays, it's probably very similar to what it was back in 2019. It's the labor that it's killing most restaurants. And in Chicago, labor has gone up about 82%
Oh my
from
goodness.
2017 up until today. And of course, revenues haven't increased 82%. So it's becoming very, very hard to make money unless you're busy 5 or 6 days a week.
So what are some of your strategies to keep people buying food and drink and all of that kind of good stuff so you could remain profitable?
I just think it needs to be sincere.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about marketing, but that's one of the struggles we have being a small company.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to bother in going to Google and bidding for words such as hotel or restaurant, because there's huge bidders out there who are just going to, make it impossible for you to have any kind of decent visibility.
Right.
I just think that having a good product at a fair price. I hate fine print. I hate deals when, like 50% off in wine bottles. I hate discounted percentages because people don't know what the full price will be. So I always like.
Yeah, Santiago, I just want to put a pin in that. It just drives me crazy because I just know, like, you see this with retail, 50% off. I'm like, but you probably raised your prices 60% before you had that 50% off sale. So none of that stuff means anything to me. That doesn't give me any real sense of value.
Correct, exactly. So one thing I've asked the team to do is whatever promotions we launch, to have a dollar amount so people know what they're getting into. And at the Roby, we had this lounge on the second floor, which never did well. We ended up transforming it, and it's called Clever Coyote, and it's a 90s theme bar. I created the playlist myself. I've always wanted a Street Fighter 2 arcade, so I bought one of those. It's a pretty cool place.
That's a reasonable thing to build an entire concept around.
Correct.
I love it.
I said, well, we want to launch the best happy hour deal in the area. So we launched all cocktails are $7. Well, now they're $8, but they were $7 when we launched. All food items in the menu were $7, 7 days a week. So it was 777. It made sense. It was a good value. No fine print. No, well, excluding this, excluding that, everything was $7. Now it's $8. That worked very well.
Yeah.
And we've done a similar promotion over at Canal Street, a restaurant we opened about 2.5 years ago inside an office building. That has been challenging. But anyway, we launched a very aggressive deal there about 8 weeks ago, and it's going well so far.
I think that's really what people want. They just don't want to feel like they're taking it advantage of, and they're happy to pay when they sense that value is there. And when helping create that value, Santiago, is manufacturing that experience. And that tells me you need to have really good people behind you, right? Because they can make all the difference, because food is food at the end of the day, but it's the people that I think make powerful connections.
Everything. If people are everything. And I think the hospitality side is something we really want to work on. That's our priority. A lot of people talk about service. I think the service eventually fails at some point. And I'm speaking about, when I say service, it's more about the technical side. Somebody came by your table or at the front desk. They checked you in efficiently. They went through all the spiel, and they did or said everything they had to. But it's the hospitality side and how we make people feel through our actions that really make a difference. And I think that having a good hospitality is what really can make or break a business.
How are you finding people these days?
I'm sorry?
How are you finding people to work with you these days that are of the right personality?
I don't know. Finding people hasn't been that hard. I think it's gotten better. I keep reading about staffing, and I think that with many of these big companies that were hiring people that used to work as servers or bartenders, they're having massive layoffs. Yeah. So I also think that some people truly enjoy the rush of working in this industry.
Oh, people are definitely for hospitality. Absolutely.
That hasn't been that bad. So it's gotten better, the staffing. It's more the nature of the beast for the Roby that makes it hard to operate. but that was true pre-COVID, and it is true now. But the hospitality, I think that's the most important part of the equation. I'm just a regular diner. I'm not the kind of guy that goes out and is, timing the server and noticing. Your typical industry person who's just taking notes. I'm not like that. When I go out, I enjoy myself just as a regular customer.
Right. I can't imagine like sitting there and doing that either. To me, it's not about how long it takes, but it's about taking the right amount of time, depending on what the experience they're creating there for you.
Correct.
I actually, Santiago, I've had too much. I've had recently a couple of places where it's like, why are you bringing the food so quick? I'm just settling in. I'm like, you want me the hell out of here already? So there's definitely an art besides the science.
And how they make you feel. Right. Most people, the average customer, is more likely to go back to a restaurant that serves okay food. I'm not saying terrible, but okay food. But the service or the hospitality was outstanding. I think people are more inclined to go back to a restaurant like that as opposed to maybe going to a place where the food was awesome, but they made you feel uncomfortable. And I think we've all experienced that. And people are smart. You sit down. A pretentious server approaches the table and you immediately feel it, and you feel that you need to earn their sympathy as a customer.
Right.
So I hate that. So making people feel welcome is absolutely our number one priority. Also, because if people feel welcomed and they feel at ease, it will be more open to sharing any kind of thoughts about their experience, right?
Yeah.
So,
I actually, I had an experience recently at a restaurant where they asked me to share my opinion, right? So I did, and then they like totally overreacted to it. I ordered a burger. It's like, why ask me what temperature you want to cook at if you're just going to serve it to me well done, right? But I said, I'll have it medium rare. And then, of course, it was well done. So when they asked, I said, "Oh, just for a point, just so like the chef knows it's well done, not medium rare." Oh, and they were like, they got all crazy about it. I'm like, it's not a big deal. I'm not angry. It's educational purposes only, just so he knows, no big deal. Then they come over and they apologize. And the manager comes over and like, are you sure everything's okay? Is everything okay? And then at the end, they gave me like a gift card that I haven't even looked at, that I have no intention of using because like shit happens, man. It's just a burger, but I loved how they reacted and took it so seriously, because that to me shows that they really care. And that goes such a long way. And I will go back there time and time again.
That's everything, because things will go wrong. Burgers will get burnt.
Right.
Hotel guests are going to check in and the room's not going to be ready. Those things will happen.
Yeah.
That's a guarantee. But how you react to those situations, it's what makes all the difference. And I mean, imagine how many times have you been to a restaurant where the food took long, the server messed up, but they're so nice.
Right.
They come to the table, they're so bubbly, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I messed up." And most people will be very forgiving about that and end up tipping the server well. So being friendly takes you a long way.
Completely agree. And if you don't respond in the way that we're talking about, then that's really more of an issue about that individual, I think, than anything else. There's nothing you could do about that particular situation. But if you're out there with an open heart and that genuine spirit of love, you are going to connect with people, and you can screw up all day long, and they're going to be forgiving.
When I first moved to Chicago, I had been here maybe for a week, and I saw an armored truck, and they had a slogan written on it that said, I think it's something along the lines like, we give good service at a profit if we can, at a cost if we must, but always good service.
Yes.
It's like, wow, this comes from an armored truck. So I kind of love that. I don't think they came up with it.
No.
But I think it was the way we've lived, because it might not make sense at a short term, but in the long term, I think that's the only way to go. If you're cutting corners in the customer's experience, you're done. Eventually you'll be done.
I agree. There's there's a major theme park company that seems to be removing a lot of stuff that used to be free and upcharging and raising prices a whole lot. And you could just see customers being like, I've had it already. It's just too much. You're changing what your brand completely is by what we perceive as gouging. You don't want to get involved in that. All right. California Lodging Investment Conference. Craig is saying, Santiago, what would you recommend for improving dining experience at an airport hotel? That's a real fair question.
That's
just cruel.
A few years ago, a few years ago, I was offered a job to manage 10 restaurants inside the DFW airport.
Oh, wow.
That was my shortest employment ever. After the first day, I was like, I think this is not for me.
Well, I will say, yeah, go on.
I think timing is all for the travelers, right? But I don't know why some airports just don't have better dining experiences. It's hard. What do you think, Lynn?
Well, I think airport hotels should really be up in their game with that, because it's such an important part if you're going to be staying there as part of your travel experience. I recently, a couple of months ago, got stuck at an airport hotel because of a flight cancellation issue. There was a mechanical issue. I got stuck overnight. It doesn't matter the hotel brand. The experience was fine, but the food was bleh. And they're not going to win me back to come to say that. They had a chance to really get to know me, really create an experience for me that is going to turn a very negative experience I was having into something very positive. But then the service was just perfunctory and the food was just forgettable. You know, I barely even remember the experience, which I think is the biggest crime at all.
Well, there's a couple of things in airports. Is first of all, you have almost a limitless amount of customers every day, so you don't have to create regulars, right? You have a captive audience every single morning, so you don't even have to try that hard. And then the second thing, which I think is true for everything in life, and my best friend used to tell me that there was a mathematical formula for happiness. And I was like, wow, what do you mean?
Yeah.
It's just a variance between expectations and reality.
Right.
And I think talking about airports, one thing that bothers many people, me included, are the prices.
Oh, it's gross.
Right. So if you were paying half of what you usually pay, you would probably be fine. Mm-hmm. But since you're paying more, the expectation is higher. But the reality is
let me just say this, Santiago. Sushi place at Minneapolis Airport. It's not worth $25 a roll, bro. I'm sorry. It's just not. I'm all aboard with him. $13.50, I'd been happy. But now I'm never going to eat there again because I felt taken for, you know?
Of course. Now, when you see the rent and the wages and unions and all of this, I just don't see how they can make any money with charging less. So I don't know. I really don't know about the finances of airport businesses.
Right.
But what I do know after being in this industry for 25 years is that people usually think that we're making a killing. Like, I could buy the same steak at home for a fraction of at the supermarket for a fraction of the price.
And it's not the same steak, by the way. It's not nearly as good. And you're not going to do
that's true. But even if it were, but who's paying for the rent and the utilities and the payroll and the forks and the spoons and whatnot? So I don't know. Airports are tough, but I don't know. I think there's big groups behind them that do very well, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, OTG does a great job, for example. All right. So let me switch topic here on you. My son was overseas for a semester and spent a week in Japan and went to some hostels. So I hadn't been thinking about that in a long time. And then you guys have this getaway hostel over there in Chicago. How's the business work for hostels? Is it a good business to be in? Because and what's the difference between that and like maybe a typical economy style hotel?
Well, hostels are the Getaway Hostel, which is, as you said, one of the properties we have here in Chicago. It's a hybrid of hostel and hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very unique product. We sell, well, what makes a hostel is you sell beds as opposed to rooms. So you're sharing the room with other people. And
Yeah.
we also have some private rooms, but it's an interesting business model that I'm not sure it's the best model for the U.S. market. I think it does very well in Europe.
Yeah.
But I don't think it does very well. I don't think it does very well here. I think the expectations, again, going back to expectations, you're not going to find the European experience in a city like Chicago or New York or LA.
Right.
It's a tough business that has forced the property to make some adjustments. Because when you're selling a bed at $15 or even $12 a night, imagine the kind of local people you get.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got drunk and you're in the neighborhood, it's just cheaper to go to the hostel and get a bed in January than taking an Uber.
Yeah.
For many people that live on the streets, it's cheaper
Yeah.
to a certain extent just to spend the night there. So it's hard. So we've implemented a rule of no locals. We want visitors.
Awesome.
And I think we're not the only ones who've done something like
Oh,
that.
I think it's a really good idea. That's very interesting.
And there's a different atmosphere, and it's interesting because just the Europeans behave differently when it comes to hostels.
Yeah.
But it's part of the portfolio. We go back to the Underdog. It's part of the portfolio. We love Getaway. But as I was saying, there's always an angle in our projects, and the angle for Getaway is that due to the proximity to churches and schools, we're never going to have a liquor license. And that kind of makes it challenging because I don't know if you've been to hostels, Glenn. I have when I was younger.
Yeah.
I spent a decent amount of time in Paris, and it was all about going back to the hostel, which was called Young and Happy. It's still around. And going back and having a beer with other
Except they changed the name, I heard, to Nakey. So, yeah.
And sharing experiences with other travelers. Once you don't have that, it makes it more challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting. What if you could also do like an age requirements that we only get like college age people, keep it 25 and under? Or
that'd be fun, right?
Yeah,
I wouldn't be allowed in the property for sure.
No, you look as young as ever. Before we wrap up, I love that you're from Mexico City. I had the best sweetbreads I ever had in my life in Mexico City, and it's one of those cities that I don't think get enough credit. When did you leave there to come to the United States?
Well, I've been living in both countries all of my life.
Oh, cool.
Actually, when I was born, my parents were living in South Carolina, Charleston. Then we moved to Mexico when I was about, I want to say 5 years old or so. Then I used to spend all my summers in Texas. I eventually I moved to Dallas when I was in my late teens, when I was like 17 or 18, and that's when I started in the hospitality industry, serving tables in Dallas. Then I moved back to Mexico, then New York, Miami, and now I'm in Chicago.
Wow.
But Mexico City, yes, it's home. It's a great city. I try to go back 2 or 3 times per year. And it has a lot to offer. I'm glad you appreciate the sweet rolls. Are quite good.
Dude, unbelievable. All right. So the most important question I'm going to ask you the entire show: where do you stand on deep dish pizza?
Is that a trick question?
No, it's very open ended. I think it's more of a casserole. I happen to like it from time to time, but I think
it is a casserole. I don't know how people do it. It's just
I don't know.
It takes 45 minutes. So,
dude, I made that mistake. I made that mistake one time. I was starving. I went, I put in an order. They're like, that'll be 45 minutes. I was like, oh, and I just like had to walk dying for 45 minutes.
Chicagoans are always trying to find an angle to compete with New York, which I think is not a fair comparison. But though we have alleys, New York doesn't have alleys. We have clean water. We have all this. And like, okay, yeah, many of those things are true. But when they go to pizza, I was like, no, don't go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, listen, you guys do a lot of good things. I'll let you have beef and stuff like all day long as you don't think you're going to do better pizza and Chinese food or bagels. All right. So that's where I stand on that. Correct. Santiago, how can we learn more about you folks over at Spearhead Hospitality?
Well, in our website, it's spearheadhospitality.com. And you'll see the list of businesses we manage. And just feel free to send an email to the contact email because I'm the one who receives it. I'll gladly get back to you.
Awesome. And hopefully we'll have a chance to hang out at the Clever Coyote because I need a tiki style drink in my life.
Fantastic. We'd love to have you here, Glenn.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys for watching another show with us today. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. So make sure that you download all of our shows. You can get that on audio wherever you get your podcasts and on video. Hey, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of those kind of places. And all shows are housed, of course, at novacancynews.com. So remember, everybody, we got one life. So blaze on, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone.